you pitched the final beat of this film when we were writing House of Dracula.
I wanted this movie to end from House of Dracula with...
In 2017, Universal Studios announced the birth of a new shared universe of monster movies, bringing their classic horror icons into the contemporary franchise film landscape. But after the critical and financial failure of its first installment, the project was indefinitely abandoned. Now, in 2024, the powers that be have called upon one pulp horror devotee and one snarky film critic to unearth the concept. I'm Dylan Roth.
And I'm Dalton DeShane.
Are you afraid of the dark universe?
Welcome back to Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? Do you know what the fuck podcast this is?
I hope so. It's Death's Door Part 2.
Door
Not
Part
only is
2.
it like sort of the climax of Phase 3, but it's the second half of the climax. So don't start here.
Thank you for coming back to listen to Part 2 after what we did to you in Part 1.
When we last left our heroes,
yeah, a couple of them were dead.
Previously on.
Yes. Listen, before we get to anything sad or heavy or, like the rest of this movie, just as we were finished recording the previous part of this episode, my cousin Jill was winning a Creative Arts Emmy for costuming for American Horror Story Delicate, and I'm so stoked about it. I do not think she listens to the show, and it will be 3 weeks before this airs. But because I cannot get on the Discord right now and gush about it because we have to record another episode of the show. Yo!
Makes us feel kind of stupid about what we're doing here. We're not winning any Emmys. We're
as
small
crazy
potatoes.
as our hours are, hers are a lot worse. Being on a crew on a show, you put in a lot of time, and she's been doing this for a long time. And congrats to Jill Dadone.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, she's from the Italian side.
Oh, okay. That's incredible. And we're going to win an Emmy too after this episode comes out. I don't think podcasts are eligible for Emmys.
We have to win a Webby, which again will still be pathetic compared to Creative Arts Emmy, but we'll do our best.
Peabody.
Yeah. I mean, hey, we should win it. We should really be up for a GLAAD award, frankly, I say very straightly. Listen, we kill too many of our gays to get a GLAAD award. No, but we do it respectfully.
That's true.
Okay? If you work for the GLAAD Awards, pretend Dalton said that and then consider us for a GLAAD award.
Speaking of killing...
I don't think I'd be the first cis-het man to win a GLAAD award, as a matter of fact.
No, probably not.
I think there are way worse ones who have. Doesn't Joss Whedon have a GLAAD award?
Probably. I don't know. Welcome back. This is Death's Door Part 2. We're happy you joined us after we killed Jack Griffin and Gwen Conliffe in the last episode.
I think I just needed the pick-me-up. I think I'm feeling it even more because where we left ourselves emotionally at the end of the last episode.
It has only been about 10 minutes since we stopped recording that first one because we don't have time. It's already
Dalton has
late.
Neighbors downstairs who really don't like when we record past 11, and it's 9:18
I don't think they love us recording past 10. But
I don't think they love us recording at all, Dalton.
But it's gonna have to happen.
Okay,
but we don't have. We got 50 pages left.
We've got 50 pages of script to do. You all know we've set the stage. We talked a little bit about what happened before. I think we should dive right in, Dalton.
Yeah. Let's go for it. Let's not keep the people waiting.
Yeah.
And let's move on to Act 2, Part 2. We should say, not only did Gwen just die, but Hunter and Marya were on their way to New York City to find the Black Lagoon.
The Big Easy.
Yes.
The city of brotherly love.
This is one that I surprised you with. I said, I'm putting the Black Lagoon in New York City. And you were like, what? And I was like, yeah, it's at the top of the Empire State Building.
Okay, but I think my response was dope.
Okay.
But that's how I answer most texts, frankly. My texts are primarily, what's up, homie? And dope. See you later.
Yes, I told you, because I just sort of had the idea that the Black Lagoon was going to be at the 99th floor of the Empire State Building. And so it is. So they're on their way there. And Jenny and Nick just fled Mexico as Gwen was dying. And those are our 4 remaining Dark Legionnaires.
Yeah, that's it.
Nick, Jenny, Marya, and Hunter.
Let's see how it goes for them.
Yes. Hunter and Marya step through a dripping purple portal onto the sidewalk of Fifth Avenue, Manhattan. Tourists scream and scatter. The red-shirted hustlers trying to sell those terrified tourists on Empire State Building tours give Hunter and Marya a dirty look. Standing waiting for them is Deputy Director Demi Lavelle. She gives a nod of acknowledgement to the agent that opened the portal, then wraps Hunter in a hug.
It's good to see you again, Hunter.
You too. And this is Marya, the newest member of the Dark Legion.
And regrettably, one of the last.
Lavelle and Marya shake hands, and Lavelle is alarmed to feel the ring on Maria's finger. She turns her hand to look at it.
Is that...
Marya pulls her hand back defensively.
Don't worry, she's on our side.
Lavelle looks at Marya curiously, but drops it. Hunter gazes up at the Empire State Building.
The old ferryman's really moving up in the world, huh?
Not a lot of beachfront property left in Manhattan, I suppose. How are you feeling? Do you need anything?
I could use a coffee. It's been a long day.
You're in the right city.
Lavelle gestures at the enormous Starbucks Reserve behind Marya.
On second thought, I think I'll be okay.
Lavelle shrugs.
Come on. I'll show you where he's set up shop.
Dalton, want to tell the people where you wrote this scene?
All of the Empire State Building stuff I wrote in that Starbucks Reserve in the basement of the Empire State Building, imagining the Black Lagoon 100 floors above my head. But after we had the Starbucks reference in part 1, I had to make the call back. Yeah.
Fun fact for the real psychos out there. Originally, I had Tim Hortons because I thought it was more pathetic. But the problem was that the Tim Hortons is from the other side of Canada, not the Pacific Northwest.
Yes.
And so we had to change it.
What is from the Pacific Northwest
is Starbucks.
Yeah.
I just felt like it would feel too much like a commercial if it was Starbucks, but then we had to lean into it and it became better.
Yeah. Lavelle leads Marya and Hunter through the grand Art Deco lobby of the Empire State Building. Hunter marvels.
I was here the year it was built, and still, it never gets old.
I've never been to New York before.
As soon as this is all over, I'll show you the sights. Although, I suppose most of the ones I know were torn down 50 years ago.
Maybe we could see a Broadway show.
Marya puts her arm around Hunter's shoulders.
Now that sounds like a plan.
Lavelle flashes a badge at a security guard and the gang loads up into an elevator.
He had us teleported 5,000 kilometers and now we're taking an elevator?
The lagoon buggers up most magics, I'm told. Or maybe I just need better mages.
The elevator door slides closed.
At the Halsey estate, Jenny looks at herself in the bathroom mirror. The bags under her eyes are getting darker from lack of sleep and pure misery. Her eyes themselves are more hollow than ever. She notices a stain on her shirt, blood from the young girl she shot in Mexico. She examines herself and finds she has some in her hair as well. Cut to Jenny standing under a hot shower, letting the water splash against her face and run down her hair. She wants to rinse off her self-loathing. It's not working. She quakes with rage, then unleashes a full-throated scream. She screams again and again, and then collapses into the corner of her shower, sobbing uncontrollably. Nick comes charging through the bathroom door, nearly taking it off its hinges in his haste. His eyes dart around the room, looking for the cause of Jenny's distress, and finds only Jenny, huddled naked in the shower. Nick unclenches only slightly, then rushes to her side. He huddles beside her under the water, unbothered as his clothes become soaked. Jenny cries in Nick's arms, and though the falling water makes it hard to tell, he's crying too. Cut to a bit later, in Jenny's bedroom. She's sitting in a lounge chair, wrapped in a towel, still in shock. Nick re-enters the room in a fresh change of clothes, holding a folded-up piece of loose-leaf paper. His hair is still damp and ruffled. He leans back against the bed, facing Jenny. Nick looks down at the paper in his hands and unfolds it, reading it for a third or fourth time. It reads, "Gwen, if you're going to be alone, do it alone. Charlie." Nick looks back up at Jenny.
Charlie's gone. Looks like she left not long after we did. I got a text from Hunter. They're with Marya in New York, tracking down the Black Lagoon. They're hoping the ferryman might be able to help us.
Jenny blinks and stares into the distance. Her eyes scan back and forth, like she's reading something, like she's rebooting.
Right. Good. Like you said, he has a connection to death that we don't yet understand. And he's fought beside us in the past. We should join them there. I'll prepare a spell.
Jenny starts to get up. Nick leans down and places a hand on her shoulder.
Easy, Jenny. You're in rough shape right now. We both are. Why don't we take a half hour to just...
Jenny swats Nick's hand away and jumps to her feet.
To do what, Nick? To wait for Gwen's body to get cold? To wait for another 10 million people to die in some unimaginable way? We don't have much.
Jenny becomes lightheaded. Nick catches her before she loses her balance.
Jenny, you've been using so much magic, opening portals to halfway across the world. You told me once that every spell has a cost, that some take years off of your life. I'm worried that at the rate you're going, you won't have much left.
Jenny leans her head against Nick's shoulder.
What good is the time I have left, Nick? What do I have to save it for?
Jenny lifts her head and looks at him. Their eyes meet, their lips inches apart. They share a breath, a moment's hesitation.
Maybe you do deserve a second chance, Nick.
Jenny turns away.
But I don't.
Jenny steps back from Nick, then shows him the door.
Back to Hunter, Marya, and Deputy Director Lavelle on the elevator.
Please tell me Prodigium has some idea of what's going on.
Lavelle and her cohort exchange a glance.
Well, not officially. But we've been speculating on our own. With Set on the loose, we initially assumed that he was responsible for the mass death in Sealands Grove.
That's what we thought at first, too. But then it looked as if Set had actually been there to awaken something else. Possibly the devil himself.
That's consistent with our theory. Prodigium was never certain whether Set was the god of death or one of several. Now it seems we have our answer. Set is traveling the world and waking up his peers. Either these awakenings are so traumatic to our reality that they cause people to die by the thousands, or Set is killing them as a sort of offering to his siblings to coax them out of hell.
You're saying one of these gods ate 9 million souls for breakfast?
My psychics report that with each of these awakenings, the barrier between Earth and hell is getting weaker. Death's door is opening, bit by bit.
And is Prodigium doing anything about it? That is your job, isn't it?
My job is making sure a different barrier doesn't get broken.
But someone is tracking them, right?
Ever since Indrid left, Prodigium is essentially a maintenance agency. We guard artifacts, maintain critical facilities, advise world leaders. But we're no longer in the position to be fighting evil, especially not any death gods.
Hunter fishes a piece of paper out of their back pocket and shows it to Lavelle.
What do you know about this?
Lavelle studies the picture.
That's the mark of Set. Where did you see this?
It appeared on Jack's neck after he died.
After he died? Are you sure about that?
I guess I can't be sure. He was invisible. Why? Is that important?
Sometimes symbols like this are used to mark a person for death. For sacrifice to the god it represents.
Lavelle drifts off, lost in a haunting thought.
Or by the god it represents.
Nick enters the Halsey estate's vast library, where Jenny, now dressed in her usual adventuring gear, flips through another dusty old tome. Nick approaches her and clears his throat, as if trying to push the remains of their awkward moment upstairs out of his head.
What are you looking for?
I'm trying to learn more about the mark of Set.
Nick looks over Jenny's shoulder at a page featuring the symbol and a lot of small lettering in a language he can't read.
Anything in there about how to get it off of you?
At the moment, I'm more concerned with how it got there in the first place. At first, I thought it was the presence of the death gods that made them appear. But at least in my case and in Gwen's, the mark appeared minutes before we encountered them. Someone chose us as targets, presumably Set, but none of us have even seen Set in weeks.
Not since he was taken out of my body by Ahmanet and placed into Adelaide Van Helsing.
Right.
Nick's face falls, a horrible realization dawning on him.
But before then, Set spent plenty of time around you, Jack, and Gwen. Maybe you weren't marked in the last few days. What if you've been marked for years?
What do you mean?
What if Set marked you while he was inside me? What if he marked the whole Legion?
But that would mean... Oh, God. Hunter!
Back in New York City, the group walks out into the bronze chamber seen last episode, marveling at the golden pattern carved into the walls, floor, and ceiling.
Was this floor just empty before?
Lavelle nods.
The top 16 stories are unusable. We're technically in the spire of the building right now, which is impractical for office space. We have a command station set up below on the 85th floor.
How long has it been here?
Honestly, we only arrived a few hours before you called. By then, the sack was already a quarter filled up.
A lot of people die every day in New York City.
Especially with the increase in suicides the past 24 hours. I'm sure the ferryman has his hands full.
They walk to the pedestal at the center of the room. The sack now looks about half full of black pearls.
We don't have long, then.
I'm guessing it will move on by midnight tonight.
Hunter circles the pedestal, thinking.
What is it you need from him?
The rest of the Legion is off chasing after Set and Ahmanet, but I wanted to get ahead of them. I was hoping he might know where the door is located. We could get there first and, I don't know, destroy it or something.
Lavelle nods.
So how do we get to him?
That's the problem. Last time he wanted to speak to me, so he opened a path. I've never had to get to him.
And there's no way to get to the lagoon unless you're close to death.
Marya looks at Hunter with wide eyes.
Well, that might not be a problem.
What do you mean?
Marya walks over and turns Hunter so her and Lavelle can look at their neck. The mark of Set glows bright and white from their flesh.
In the library, Nick is pacing the floor with his phone to his ear. Jenny is frantically flipping pages.
They're not answering.
And there's nothing in here about how to remove a divine death mark.
Nick hangs up, barely resisting the urge to throw his phone against a wall. He freezes when he sees a new notification.
Fuck. He just woke up another one.
Where?
Greece. Athens. Who would that be?
Or Hades, most likely, or rather Thanatos. Some believe they were one and the same. How did they die?
Close up on Nick's phone. It's showing news footage of an anchorwoman standing in the Monastiraki, an outdoor shopping neighborhood in Athens. She speaks into the camera as crowds bustle behind her. Suddenly, she stops speaking and her face grows blank. The crowd behind her also stops moving. Those who were walking tumble forward. When they hit the ground, their heads detach from their bodies and they roll on the cobblestones. A thin stripe of red appears on the anchorwoman's neck. Just as it starts to drip, her head tips forward and falls off her body, severed cleanly. Her body crumples, and as it does, we see the same happen to every man, woman, and child in the market behind her. Nick grimaces and turns off his phone.
Horribly. It's too late for them. We need to stop whatever's coming for Hunter, like we stopped Yomra.
We were lucky that time. Every mythology has different rules about fighting or banishing gods and demons. We don't even know which ones are real or which one is next.
Well, we've got to do something.
I can open a portal to New York.
Do it. They're at the top of the Empire State Building. Hunter, Marya, Lavelle, and Lavelle's assistant storm into the Prodigium Command Center on the 85th floor, sparsely populated by just a handful of agents.
All right, everyone, look alive. We're on protection duty till further notice. We've got a death god on its way, and its target is Hunter Marin. Our primary objective right now is keeping them safe. I want magic users manning the stairwells and elevators. Everyone else, arm up.
Hunter trembles as everyone rushes to positions. Marya puts her hands on their shoulders.
You're going to be okay. We're not going to let anything happen to you. Understand? Just stay close to me.
Hunter nods shakily. The lights flicker and then go out. The emergency lights kick on, bathing the room in a faint red glow.
Here we go, people. Be ready for anything.
The floor is dark and quiet, everyone listening for the smallest sound. Then, the low mechanical rumbling of the elevator. 2 Prodigium agents flank it, and Lavelle moves to stand between them, in front of the elevator doors. Marya and Hunter stand further back, ready for anything. They all watch the old-fashioned needle above the elevator doors tick upwards toward their floor. Everyone tenses. The elevator dings. The doors open onto hell itself. They seem to hover in the air over an endless red-hot expanse. Millions of headless bodies stand tied to wooden pikes. Every body is being torn apart by wild dogs, vultures, snakes, carnivores of every stripe. Their decapitated heads are tethered to their ankles like a ball and chain, screaming and crying helplessly. The team outside the elevator barely has time to let this horror sink in before there's a scream to their left. Lavelle shines a flashlight toward the stairwell, revealing a Prodigium agent bleeding out on the ground, his neck torn open. Another scream from the right. They turn, and Lavelle's flashlight reveals another Prodigium agent. Standing over him is a muscular dog feeding on the agent's face, its 3 heads snapping at each other and fighting between them for the next bite.
Oh God. Cerberus.
The Prodigium mages step forward, creating a shield of glowing energy between Cerberus and the team. Cerberus charges, colliding with the shield. Its faces push against the membrane, jaws snapping against the energy, but it can't get through. Marya holds Hunter tight. Lavelle approaches the shield, studying Cerberus with curious eyes, and then jumps as a snake lunges against the barrier. It's Cerberus's tail, a thick, venomous snake attached to the beast's hindquarters. While the mages hold the line, we zoom in on Cerberus's back. Strands of fur begin to lengthen and thicken, themselves transforming into snakes that detach themselves and slither away from the beast. Hunter spots them, just thin shadows on the ground, as they sneak their way around the barrier.
Hey, look out!
It's too late. The snakes snap at the mage's legs. They cry out and fall to their knees, and the shield falls. As the agents lie twitching on the ground, Cerberus leaps, hitting Lavelle in the chest. It pins her to the ground, but she's able to get her gun up. She fires her clip into all three heads, blowing open craters that regenerate as quickly as she can shoot. Hunter breaks loose of Marya's grip and charges at the dog, shoulder-checking it in the side and sending it rolling off of Lavelle and through the elevator door, where it falls down into the field of bodies. Hunter helps Lavelle to her feet.
Thanks, kid.
Come on, we gotta go.
Go where?
The ferryman. If we can't get to him, then we need to let him out.
Are you crazy?
What other option do we have?
Marya, Hunter, and Lavelle run for the stairs when suddenly Lavelle is yanked back by her ankle. Cerberus's snake tail has its jaws clamped around her leg, pulling her back toward the elevator door. Cerberus himself is hanging from the bottom lip of the door over hell, claws dug into the linoleum in our world. It whips its tail back and Lavelle is flung screaming through the door into the field of bodies. As Cerberus climbs to its feet, we see Lavelle's body being set upon by wild beasts. The elevator doors close on the image of her being torn limb from limb. Only Hunter and Marya are left. Cerberus stands in front of the elevator, growling at the two of them. Marya pushes Hunter behind her.
No matter what happens next, you get to the ferryman, you understand?
What do you mean?
On my signal, you run.
What signal?
Marya dashes away from Hunter, toward the stairwell, waving her arms.
Hey, triplets of Hellville, over here.
Cerberus glances her way, but stays trained on Hunter.
Not enticing enough, huh? How about this?
In an instant, she transforms into a black cat and hisses at the beast. Now Cerberus turns, all three heads laser-focused on the feline. Marya dashes into the stairwell and Cerberus gives chase, the two of them disappearing down the stairs.
Marya, no!
Hunter now stands alone in the building. They're about to run to the stairwell when they hear a ding. They turn back to the elevator. Fluorescent light flickers from within. The doors open, not on hell, but on an ordinary elevator. But standing inside is a 7-foot-tall man with a long black beard, clad in a black toga. In one hand, he holds a long two-pronged pitchfork, a bident, while in the other he holds a large, gnarled key made of bone. He steps out of the elevator into the room. With a sound like a clap of thunder, two black feathered wings snap open from his back, the flickering light of the elevator turning him into a menacing silhouette.
Oh, fuck.
Hunter runs.
In the Halsey library, Jenny makes a cut with her fingernail through the space in front of her. The cut leaks purple pus onto the floor, then immediately seals itself up.
What's going on?
There's something wrong with the space around the Empire State Building. I can't open a portal anywhere near it.
Get us as close as you can.
Jenny refocuses, makes a new incision. This one is also healing, but not as quickly. She digs both hands into the womb and pulls with all her might, not just physical, but mystical. She screams, and we see visual echoes ripple off her body like a flickering flame, a massive exhale of time. Nick watches in horror. At last, the portal is just wide enough for Nick to jump through. She follows him. And before she can get her bearings, Nick pulls her out of the way of an oncoming yellow taxi. They've arrived smack in the center of a busy Manhattan intersection, right in the middle of Times Square. Horns blare as cars skid to a halt around them. Tourists and New Yorkers point and scream in response to two people appearing out of a bleeding hole in space. The panic gets worse as the pedestrians gradually recognize them as Nick Morton and Jennifer Halsey from the Dark Legion. They are soon swarmed by frenzied citizens, shouting questions, pleading for help, and placing blame. Jenny turns to Nick, who points south in the direction of traffic.
That way, 12 blocks.
Nick and Jenny start pushing through the crowd, which is growing more dense by the second. And you better fucking believe I looked up which way traffic runs on that avenue.
You shouldn't need to look it up. You live here.
I don't drive in Manhattan, Dalton.
Me neither. On the 85th floor of the Empire State Building, Hunter bursts into the stairwell and starts taking the steps two at a time. When they get to the first landing, they look behind them. Hades stands in the doorway, not even bothering to look up at Hunter. He slowly rises about 6 inches off the ground and begins to float up the stairs. Hunter gasps and runs again. They flee up, and up, floor after floor. After 10 floors, Hunter is beginning to tire, but Hades is not. Hunter desperately pulls themselves up by the handrail, gasping for breath, before finally staggering through the door of the 99th floor. The bronze chamber glows with the soft red emergency lights. Hunter limps towards the pedestal with the egg sac. Hades appears in the doorframe behind them. He floats soundlessly behind Hunter, gaining rapidly. Hunter dives for the pedestal, grabbing the sack in their hands and squishing it to jelly. They land hard on the metal floor and roll over to look at Hades. But Hades is gone. Not only that, but the walls and ceiling are beginning to disappear. The night air whips at Hunter's hair, and before they know what's happening, the entire Empire State Building has disappeared around them.
Meanwhile, Nick and Jenny have managed to advance a few blocks through Midtown when a deep booming sound echoes through the streets. Civilians instinctively duck for a moment before looking up, agape at something impossible. The night sky has opened up and swallowed the Empire State Building.
Hunter falls over 1,000 feet above New York City. They scream, grabbing at nothing in the air. There's no sign of Hades or Cerberus or Marya or anyone. Just Hunter, plummeting toward the ground. But it's not ground. The entire city block that used to be home to the Empire State Building is now a square pool filled with black water. As Hunter gets close to the water, their descent slows, less like they're free-falling and more like they're sinking. They look down at their reflection growing bigger and bigger in the black pool. They adjust to a dive position, and when they finally hit the water, they don't sink into it, they surface on the other side of the membrane, bobbing out of the water as if they had come from below. They take a moment to get their bearings, but they're used to this by now. They swim to the shore, which in this case is flat sidewalk. Passersby gather in groups, looking with confusion at the enormous lagoon where the Empire State Building used to be. And directly across the street from Hunter stands Hades, bident and key in hand. The crowd notices him and scatters, clearing the street. Hades floats across the asphalt towards Hunter. They know they can't run anymore. We see them trembling with their back to the water. And then, rising up out of the water behind them, is the ferryman. Water cascades down his slick gray-green flesh. He puts a webbed hand on Hunter's shoulder as he climbs onto the sidewalk, stepping between Hades and Hunter. Hades stops in the middle of the street. He is voiced in the film by Doug Bradley.
Ah, Sharon, old friend. It's been a long time. Is this boy your ward?
The ferryman says nothing.
Fret not. You may remain together, for your services are no longer needed.
Hades readies his bident.
It is time to ferry you both to the other side.
The ferryman hisses, spines flaring from his arms and back. The two timeless gods stride toward each other with purpose and begin to fight. Hades stabs with the bident, the creature dodging and slapping it away, clawing at Hades' robes. The creature manages to grab Hades by the shoulders and throws him over Hunter's head toward the water. Hades hovers effortlessly above the surface, sliding back along it like a figure skater, casting no reflection at all. He makes an arc around the water, heading back towards Hunter, and throws his bident at them like a javelin. Hunter flinches. Before the bident hits, the creature throws his arms up and a geyser jets out of the water, knocking the bident off course. Hades tries flying over their heads to grab it, but the creature nabs him by the ankles and swings him around, tossing him along the asphalt. He skids to a halt in a wide puddle created by the geyser. Hades climbs to his feet, flicking water off of himself. Thick strands of seaweed burst out of the puddle and grab him by the wrists, neck, and ankles, pulling him down into their depths. He grunts and yells and fights against their grip. But then, he's gone. Hunter walks up behind the creature.
Is that it? Is he gone?
The ferryman turns to face Hunter. Hunter wraps their arms around him in a tight hug, and the ferryman puts his hands on their back.
Oh, God, thank you.
They pull back.
Wait, I need something from you. Set and Hades are trying to open Death's door, and we need to stop them before they do. Do you know where it is?
The ferryman peels off an iridescent scale from their chest and places it in Hunter's hand. Hunter closes their eyes and holds it for a moment.
Of course. We should have known.
They open their eyes.
Thank you, Sharon, for everything.
Before they finish the sentence, 2 steel prongs stab through the ferryman's neck, up into his jaw, and back out just underneath his eyes. Hunter screams, and the ferryman falls. At first, the Bident seems to be held by nobody at all, and then Hades materializes, removing his golden helm of invisibility. Hunter backs away from the god.
No, please.
Rest easy, young one. There is no judgment for you here. This is simply the way things must be.
Hades drives the Bident into Hunter's stomach. Their eyes widen, and blood begins to pour out of their mouth. Hades twists the pitchfork, then withdraws it, and Hunter falls to the ground. Hades looks down at Hunter and the ferryman bleeding out onto the pavement, emotionless. He puts his helm back on his head and vanishes. Hunter, still alive but fading, manages to drag themselves closer to the ferryman. The ferryman lifts his head and sputters out a moan of sorrow.
It's okay, big guy. We did our best.
Hunter collapses next to the ferryman, their hand over his.
But Hades doesn't get to be the one to carry me into hell. I want it to be you. It was always supposed to be you.
They look at each other. The creature understands. He crawls forward and puts a webbed hand on Hunter's chest. Hunter lies on their back, looking at the sky. Their mouth begins to fill with thick, black sludge. They choke on it. They spasm, cough, smile, fade to black. Nick and Jenny run down Fifth Avenue, chasing the sirens. The Empire State Building is back exactly where it should be, as if it never left. A crowd is gathered at the base of the building. They push their way through to see what they're all looking at.
No!
Jenny falls to her knees. Nick puts his fist to his mouth and stifles a sob. Lying in a pool of black water on the sidewalk are Hunter and the creature. Hunter's eyes are closed, and placed on their lids are 2 sardonyx stones. On their lips is a large fish scale. The sack of gems that Hunter carried is now in the creature's hand, next to Hunter's face. Next to Hunter's body, written in black sludge, is a single word: Cairo. Marya bursts out of the Empire State Building through a revolving door. She gasps in horror at the sight of the bodies in front of her. She steps forward, reaching out to touch Hunter's body. Before she can, it begins to sink, along with the creatures, into the black puddle. Within moments, they're both gone.
Let's take a second.
Take a second. We're not done with Act 2
No, we're
yet,
not.
if you
But
can
this
believe
was
it.
just like we did with Jack. Let's take and Gwen. This was your baby.
Yeah.
Hunter is very much your baby.
And you know what? I gave them a little bit of a win before they went, which is that Hades asks, "Is this boy yours?" That's right. Hunter passes.
Okay. Well, first of all, Hunter is okay. I don't get to make the non-binary rules. Whatever. This is your character.
Look, they were misgendered in the right direction.
Yes, I guess.
Anyway,
I guess if that counts.
No, but I did want to give them, first of all, an epic Black Lagoon head fuck to go out
I was
on.
thinking that this is like, people look back at the Dark Legion series at some point and it'd be like, you know what's weird about the first one? There's no Black Lagoon sequence.
Yeah. We've done so many Black Lagoon sequences at this point. This was one we hadn't done.
Yeah.
What if it was in a building? In a city?
As always, it's the same compliment I do every time you do one of these. I love the use of gravity.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way that reflections become reality, and like the sense of space is subject to sort of an interpretation and becomes real as like sort of the audience becomes a part of it.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
And I still always make time for the creature walking out of the water with the water dripping. That like still giving that classic image.
This is a goodbye for him too.
Yes.
Right?
And that's the thing. They had to go out together, right? They're bound together. They have this relationship. And actually, one thing we didn't talk about is we talked a lot about how, especially as we were writing Act 1 and the first half of Act 2, the death being opportunities for judgment of all of our characters. And that definitely made sense for Jenny, for Jack, for Gwen.
Yeah.
All of whom have done things they feel guilty about, that they regret. Hunter hasn't really had that as much.
No, and actually, Hunter has kind of found a degree of peace with themselves during this season.
Yes, and while those stories made sense for those first three characters, Hunter's relationship with death has always been about it being kind of a mechanics thing, about it being very matter of fact, about, well, the creature doesn't do this out of hate or anger. It's his job.
Right.
His job is people die and they go to hell. And so this was a very matter of fact one. Like, there's no judgment for Hunter. He's just, the Hades is just like, hey, this is the way things work.
Right. And isn't
now
that kind of compatible with Hades as a mythological character?
Yes.
Because he's not evil in Greek mythology. He is a guy with a job.
Yeah.
It's the Disney movie that decided that he was also a bastard and cast him accordingly.
It's just you have to be carried into the place where you're going, and he's there to do it, you know? And so I think we're also we can talk about this more in the future, but I think that's going to come into play more as we go forward. I don't know, had to make it be the creature who does it, right? Because that's the thing,
that was non-negotiable. I mean, this is your character, even though they were in my wheelhouse. This one, obviously, just like I would have been devastated if I didn't get to handle Gwen's death. You had to handle Hunter's death. Yeah, but I mean, there couldn't have it go any other way than that.
Well, that's what I realized. I mean, basically, plot-wise, we had ourselves with like, oh, well, Hades kills Hunter, but I was like, no, nobody should kill Hunter except the creature, because that's their relationship.
But that also leads to the whole idea that we've talked about is like when other than when the lagoon the barrier is broken and he goes on a killing spree, when we see the creature kill someone who's been killed in real life in the regular world, is the creature really the one killing them, or are we simply seeing a version of their death from his perspective?
And this still leaves that ambiguous.
Yes. Yeah. Like, we usually have the creature kill someone in a way that sort of parallels their natural or, you know, their physical cause of death. In this case, it would be Hunter, like, choking on their own blood, right?
Yeah. Is this the creature killing Hunter, or is it just us seeing through this sort of creature lens as Hunter dies from Hades' attack? And
no one else sees it, so we still don't really know.
Yeah.
Although with the barrier broken, all bets are off.
Yes.
But what's fun, it's like there's been a conversation on the Discord recently about the distinction between occult horror and fantasy. And one of those things is, are the rules extremely rigid and knowable by the characters or not? And one of the ways I think that we've prevented ourselves from getting into fantasy is that, often against my own instincts as a sci-fi person who wants to know how things work, we don't answer a lot of questions. And as storytellers, that's often a big time saver. It's really convenient. Anyway, well done, I say, about you fictionally killing another child. I also want to make it clear that the children who we see died in Greece, I read that section, but Dalton wrote that.
Man, woman, and child, because they would be there. It's not specifically killing the child.
And to be clear, every one of these involved the death of children. So
this is a dark one, folks.
It's kind of hard to imagine it getting darker than this, but will it?
We're trying to keep it light in the breaks, but we
would like you to keep listening. You can take breaks. It's okay, but please come back. We would miss you.
Yeah.
Please don't make us regret this. That's some real abuser language here. It's your fault if you react negatively to our choices.
We're Darvoing our audience. I realize how fucked it is that I said that this is my favorite Dark Legion movie at the beginning, but I'm going to talk about that more after Act 2.
Yes. Over black.
Open your eyes, my love.
Adelaide Van Helsing pulls her hands away from Ahmanet's eyes and wraps them around her waist. The princess is standing with her back to her and looks out into an ancient Egyptian temple. There are statues of Ahmanet's gods, including Set. Ahmanet smiles.
The gods of old. Soon they shall be my kin.
I'm afraid most of them are figments of human imagination, dear princess. Your ancestors sought answers to life's great questions and gave those questions names, faces, stories, and scandals. But there has never been a god of the sun or the moon or the hunt or mischief or agriculture. There is only us.
The gods of death.
The gods of everything, really. We created the earth, growing it like a shell over our own reality. We watched eagerly over the eons as life developed on its surface, waiting with bated breath to finally reap what we so carefully sowed. And then, at last, the human soul.
For what purpose? To worship you?
To suffer for us. It's a need we have. It nearly destroyed us. Or I suppose we nearly destroyed ourselves, punishing each other endlessly. Until a few of us found a better way.
You and your siblings.
We designed the perfect suffering machine. A complex spirit capable of guilt, shame, self-loathing, cruelty, hope, and despair. Constantly at war with each other and with yourselves, desperate to believe that whatever made you is out there somewhere, that it loves you, that it wants to reward you for a life well lived. And yet, deep down, convinced that you're unworthy, broken, evil. And so, no matter how pious or virtuous you may be, when we harvest your soul and we weigh it against Ma'at's feather, or check for your name in St. Peter's ledger, when we find you unworthy, you believe you deserve it, and your suffering is more delicious than anything we could ever inflict on each other.
I never believed it. When I was trapped in a living death for thousands of years, drowning in liquid mercury again and again, I never forgot that it was I who had been wronged.
Adelaide plants a kiss on Ahmanet's brow.
That's why I love you, princess. You made a pact with a god you'd been taught all your life to fear and mistrust. You slew your own father, his wife, their newborn son, and anyone else who stood in your way without an ounce of remorse because they stood between you and power. You may have been born human, but you have always been one of us, Ahmanet.
Adelaide gestures to a flat, gold-encrusted altar in the center of the temple.
Now, shall we make it official?
Marya, Nick, and Jenny are on the 85th floor of the Empire State Building, where Lavelle's team had made camp. Bodies of Prodigium agents still litter the ground, but they've covered their bodies with tarps. Jenny sits with her head in her hands. Nick paces. Marya stares into space. Of course it's Cairo. How could we be so stupid? We knew it was the nexus between Earth and Hell. Where else could the door be?
Hunter died for that knowledge. We need to use it before it's too late.
No time to wait for a flight. Do we know anyone left at Prodigium that can get us there?
A flight? Nick, we have no idea how close they are to opening the door. We need Jenny to teleport us.
She nearly killed herself getting us here. That's too many teleportations in one day. Jenny raises her head weakly.
I can do it.
Jenny, if you keep going like this, you're going to use up whatever life you've got left. Jenny has no answer. You don't have to do this. She gets to her feet.
You know I do.
She takes a deep breath, mustering her strength, and slices a portal in the air. Through the opening, we can see a downtown intersection in Cairo, busy even though it's the middle of the night. Jenny steps through first, but as soon as she breaches the portal, an immense wind whips her hair back. She staggers out the other side and looks around. Nick and Marya follow closely behind her, each of them also rattled by a wind gust as they pass through. They're not in Cairo. They are in what appears to be the remains of a city, except the land is flat in all directions as far as they can see. The buildings are rubble. Limbs poke out from them, none moving. The wind blows like a hurricane. The trio takes wide stances just to stay upright and has to yell over the sound of it. What happened? This isn't Cairo. Jenny points behind them. They look to see a crop of 5 massive tornadoes spinning miles away at the edge of town.
I think we were blown off course.
Nick is looking at a map on his phone. This isn't even Egypt. This is Accra, Ghana.
What are you talking about? She was using magic. How could the wind blow us off course?
Jenny reaches out and touches the back of Maria's neck. The mark of Set glows from it.
I don't think that's an ordinary wind.
Marya slaps her hand to the back of her neck.
No, it can't. I'm not one of you. I'm not in the Legion. This is a mistake.
When we met, I still had Set inside me. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You two go. I can make another portal. I'm marked anyway. Maybe it'll take me instead.
Marya marches forward and slaps Jenny across the face.
No. That is enough of that.
She whirls on Nick.
From both of you. I don't care what either of you have done in your past that makes you think this is your fault. Tens of millions of people have died in the last 24 hours, and the last thing they need is your guilt. Now, I haven't known either of you very long, but I know that no matter what you think, you're both good people. And I know that because Jack knew that, and he was the only man I ever trusted.
Marya!
There's no use arguing with a dead man, Jenny, so save it. Jack knew something else, too. He knew that if anyone else was going to be able to stop what's coming, it was you two. And if you knew it, then I know it.
She advances on Jenny and points at the mark on her own neck.
This mark right here, this means we're all in this together. And if you're going to be on my team, you need to get your shit together and forgive yourself. For Jack, for Hunter, for Gwen, for Victor, and for Carol.
She turns and faces the tornadoes. They've shifted direction, heading back toward the city center, towards them.
And once you're done with that, we go kill God.
I love this monologue. I love a good monologue, but I feel like I actually went back and rewrote some of the stuff I'd written for Marya. I didn't write a ton for Marya in this. It was mostly in your corner. To realize, I was thinking sort of old, because she's old, I tend to think more formal. No, she's she's wise, but she's very plain spoken.
Yeah.
She changes with the times.
She's Janelle Monáe.
Yeah.
She's hip.
Yeah. And I like this because, I don't know, she's the newest member of this cast, right? And so it's cool for her to have sort of a defining moment in the script that we can look back on and say, that's Marya.
Yeah. We talk about this more in our next episode, but we really wanted, because we knew Jack was dying early, that Maria's role was going to be to sort of carry that flame through the rest of the movie.
But in her own way, right?
In her own way.
So
Jack wouldn't give this monologue.
We heard Jack's speech, right? Yeah. Jack's speech has kind of a similar idea, but it's very soft and folksy and charming. Marya is like, shut the fuck up. If you're going to be on my team. I like that. It's good detail. In the Egyptian temple, Adelaide lays Ahmanet gently down onto the altar, surrounded by the stone statues of... Oh, I guess we should also address that I've finally put into text the creation myth of this universe.
Yes.
Which we've never talked about on the air before. It'll be in the planning episode. So finally I found a place where it didn't feel out of place to explain how we all got here.
And it makes sense.
Which is that our entire world is created by evil as a means to create souls worth torturing. And it was your idea that rather than it's just for fun, that it's sort of like this urge that they can't just beat, and they used to do it to each other, and they found a way out. By creating a new class they could abuse.
My sort of, if we're going to get really deep into it, because I don't even know if we talk about it in the next episode, but my sort of idea is that the demons of hell used to be a sort of ordinary society like us.
We do talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like millions or billions of years ago, basically found a way to live forever, which turned them cruel because there were no longer consequences for everything. And so they have grown to thrive on and feed on pain. And instead of doing it to each other, they have figured out a way to build an entire plane of souls to torture.
And everything I've written for this has in some way been a class critique. And it's just the idea of being like, we have so much power and we're so bored, and the only thing we can think to do with it is fuck with people.
What's the fun of being in the upper class if there's no lower class?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Is that they created what they imagine is good, clean, consequence-free fun in what might as well be a simulation to them.
Yeah.
But we're real. And the things that happen to us matter to us. And they should matter to them, but they do not. Anyway, I can just let the text speak. I don't have to do my rant. This whole thing, this is 30 part. I guess I only write half of them, and the ones we split. This is an 18-part rant about, okay. In the Egyptian temple, Adelaide lays Ahmanet gently down onto the altar, surrounded by the stone statues of Egyptian gods. She looks down at the princess, whose icy calm has cracked a bit. Her breathing accelerates. Adelaide lightly brushes her face with her hand.
How unlike you to show fear.
I'm not afraid.
Adelaide smirks. She's not buying it.
Calm yourself, my love. You shall never know fear again.
Adelaide raises her arms above her head and looks at the temple ceiling. She takes a deep breath. Then with a jolt, she stretches her body in every direction, lifting slowly off the temple floor. She is dissolving, transforming from the bottom up into a flock of jet black crows. The crows circle rapidly above Ahmanet, and when she looks down at her own body, she sees that the wind from the crow's wings is lifting her off of the altar. As the crows fly wildly around the temple, they scrape against the statues, wearing down the details of their faces. The swirl of crows coalesces into a spinning black tendril, which strikes down from the ceiling straight into Ahmanet's mouth. Dozens of black birds dive violently down her throat. She writhes in pain, eyes wide, unable to scream.
In Accra, the surviving Dark Legion marches towards the oncoming whirlwinds, Marya in front, Jenny and Nick flanking her.
I'll make the first move, get him nice and docile. Then, Jenny, you move in for the kill.
Got it.
And I'll provide moral support. The 5 funnels converge to create one, as wide and tall as the Empire State Building itself. It towers over them, lightning crackling from its interior, striking out at the rubble around them. The violent wind whips at them, but they stand firm. Eventually, the tornado slows and dissipates, revealing the god underneath. He's a 12-foot-tall cyclops, his one wide red and yellow eye staring down at them. He is naked, covered in thick red hair from neck to toe. His head, meanwhile, has long, straight white hair that extends down his back to the ground and then back even farther, tracing the trail of the twisters all the way to the horizon line. His skin is crimson red. 2 elephant tusks extend out of his mouth, dripping pitch-black venom. He does not smile. He speaks with the voice of Tony Todd.
Marya Zaleska, you have been given a great gift this day. Your mark grants you the privilege of divine sacrifice. Will you meet this fate with honor?
I did not survive hundreds of years of torture at the hands of Count Dracula just to be killed by... Who the fuck are you?
I am Odomakama Owuo, the Great Destroyer, the Abosom of Death. He who killed creation itself. And after all these millennia...
Thick gray saliva drips from his mouth. He reaches behind his head, and from his thick tangle of long hair, he pulls a rusted cutlass.
I hunger.
He advances on them, his eye flicking from Marya to Jenny, then to Nick.
Whoa, big guy. Why don't you keep that big-ass eye on the prize over here?
He looks back at her and stares directly into her cursed ring. We cut from its glowing pearlescent stone to his eye, pupil shrinking as he's put under her trance.
On your knees.
He obeys.
Dr. Halsey?
Countess?
Jenny steps forward and snaps her arms out. Owuo's arms do the same, freezing them out at either side, immobile.
What is it that gives you your power? Your tusks?
With a tug of her fists, Owuo's tusks are pulled out of his mouth and tossed back into the rubble. Black blood pours and fills his mouth.
Is it your hair?
Jenny magically yanks the cutlass from Owuo's grip. It hovers in the air, then slices through his white hair, separating the miles of it from his head. He roars with rage.
Or perhaps this is a cursed blade, is that it?
Jenny hovers the point of the cutlass right in front of his eye. She closes her hands together and then separates them quickly, and the cutlass duplicates itself, creating a grid of 20 swords hanging in the air in front of him. She punches her hands forward, and they all stab into him, piercing him all over his body. All except for his eye, which they need to stay fixated on Marya's ring. He grunts and screams with frustration, still frozen in place, but alive. Marya advances on him, holding the ring out just a few feet from his face.
What is it, Owuo? What drives you? Is it judgment? Justice? Faith?
He pants and bleeds. Marya steps forward again.
Answer me!
I already told you. I hunger.
A long, fur-covered tongue flicks out from his bleeding mouth, wrapping around Marya's forearm. In a blink, it tugs her arm into his mouth up to her elbow. She screams and tries to pull it out. Now Owuo smiles, and we can see that as Marya pulls her arms out, his teeth scrape the flesh from her bones like a chicken wing. She withdraws just a bloody skeleton covered in patches of missed muscle, limp and useless. Owuo closes his eye and chews. He moans with satisfaction. When he's done, he spits something into the dirt at his feet. Marya's ring. Owuo begins to stand to his full height again. New tusks grow out of his mouth and his hair grows long.
You two need to leave.
No, we can't. Not again.
Leave, Halsey!
She dives for her ring with her good arm. She manages to grab it, but then Owuo stomps on her hand, crushing it into the dirt. Marya screams. Owuo smiles again, and a drop of black venom drips from his tusk, falling onto Marya's cheek. Her eyes widen, and her body goes limp in the dirt.
No!
Jenny runs for her, but before she can reach her, Owuo picks up Marya with both hands. He licks his drooling lips and bites into her side, savoring the flavor. Marya stares at Jenny with open eyes. She's unable to scream, but tears pour down her face. Jenny blinks back tears of her own and runs back to Nick. They scramble over the rubble to safety while Owuo sits in the background, feasting on the Countess.
In the temple, the frenzy of birds continues to flow into Ahmanet as if from a faucet. The overflow chips more and more stone from the statues of the Egyptian pantheon. Ahmanet's white and chalky skin has suffered hundreds of tiny cuts as beaks, talons, and feathers scratch against her. The cuts ooze thick, black blood. Until, finally, the last of the birds disappears down her gullet. Ahmanet sits up sharply, clutching her throat, screaming at first, until she discovers, to her own surprise, that she no longer feels frightened. As we pull away from a close-up of Ahmanet's face, we see that her skin is no longer pale, cracked, and peeled, but radiant. Her yellowed rags have smoothed into an elegant silk drapery. Her tattoos remain, bold and sharp as if they were newly applied. From over her shoulder, someone extends a delicate, manicured hand. Ahmanet looks. It's Adelaide, dressed sharply in black, her wedding suit. Ahmanet steps off the altar and looks around the room with new eyes. The temple, too, has been restored. No longer crumbled and dusty, its statues look freshly carved. Because they are. Instead of the old Egyptian gods, the statues now bear the likeness of Set, Satan, Mictlantecuhtli, Hades, Owuo, and Ahmanet, goddess of death. End of Act 2.
Damn. So what I was going to say earlier...
We got to give a moment for Marya here.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Okay, all right, go into it.
Yes, Marya, we're down to 2.
Yeah.
Nick and Jenny are now the only surviving members of the Dark Legion.
The original 2.
The original 2. Which maybe I'll save what I was about to say about Marya's death and say the thing that makes this my favorite Dark Legion movie is it's a horror movie.
Yes, that's the thing you were talking about in the beginning, about fulfilling the potential. The promise of the premise,
honestly,
Dalton.
That's the thing. I feel like this movie, more than any other, fulfills the promise of the premise of the Dark Universe. We have used franchise storytelling across over 20 films to build to a point where we could do a massive... something I've never seen before, which is like a globe-spanning...
slasher movie,
essentially, where our characters are being picked off one by one, and it's not what you expect from a Dark Legion movie, because we've always gone more action.
Yeah.
And so
it's more shocking.
And we give... I'm really proud of the sort of false flags we put at the beginning. Like, I love the thing you did of like having the six pieces of the breath of Belial that we need to find, which is like,
well, I think that actually might have been your idea about creating sort of the red herring that we're going to do a fetch quest.
I think
like
it was
we did
you.
Before. Well, I don't know. We're a team. We succeed and fail as a team. Dalton.
You came with the breath of Belial, and I was like, yes, like. Because the thing we talk about in the next episode, we didn't want to do another fetch quest because that's such an action movie thing. And we wanted our characters to be hunted from the beginning. And so,
but a fun way to set that up is to give them the expectation that they have that they are usually on the hunt for something.
Yes, we find this thing and then we save the day.
Yeah.
And then literally after finding the first one, it's like, oh, fuck. Actually, we have no idea what to do. And then we also do the false thing of letting them kill some of the gods.
Yeah, just getting a victory, which means that any of them, it means they could potentially win. And then again and again, they find that they get close, but the thing about getting so close and then failing is that it can really only make you feel more hopeless.
Yeah.
And if we're going to extend the central metaphor of this thing, it's the idea of like fighting again and again against someone who seems immune to all consequences.
Yeah.
It just gets to feel more and more unfair the more times you fight and lose, and the more times your wins don't change anything.
Yeah.
This is the thing that crushed Gwen.
Yeah.
Right? It's the thing that she felt like she could change in the real world. and then she became part of a different world that had all the same problems.
A world of gods and monsters.
A world of gods and monsters. And just like in the struggle that she was born into, nothing fucking works. But there's a moral to this story, and we're gonna get to it. And I promise the moral isn't that nothing matters. I promise.
That's not what we believe.
No.
And we wouldn't make that the lesson of the Dark Universe. But the idea of the Dark Universe, it opens up the possibility of an Avengers scale horror movie. And I think that's what we've done here.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of that. And I think this is the exact kind of thing I would have hoped to accomplish from episode 1. And I think we've done it.
Do you think it would have been possible to get to this 2 years ago? Could we have made a version of House of Dracula that was like this? Because I don't know. I kind of don't.
Maybe.
I think that the expectation of it. There's a Superman the Animated Series episode that is a horror movie, and what makes it so terrifying when you're a child watching this is that the body horror, the monsters seeming to win for a while. It's a Dr. Fate related stories, and it's just so weird to watch horrible things happen to these characters. In a horror story where you have demons who are hijacking people's bodies, that's normal. But it's not normal for this show, and it used to freak me the fuck out.
Yeah.
We created the conditions for this to work the way that it works.
Yeah, I think maybe we could have done House of Dracula as more of a straight-ahead horror movie instead of sort of the action horror that it was. But we couldn't have created something that hits like this does. This works partially because of everything that came before it, both horror and action. And the fact that, especially now in a Dark Legion film, we have flipped totally away from Mummy's Hand, which I feel like was definitely
full
more
on
of an
action movie. Yeah.
I think that's what I've always wanted to accomplish.
This to me also addresses one of the problems I sometimes have in getting really into a slasher movie, which is that a slasher movie is usually and justly like 100 minutes. You get introduced to a group of characters, you watch those characters die, right? And if there's lots of different tones of a slasher movie, right? Some of them are just fun, but you do not get very close to these characters a lot of the time, and some of them are clearly chaff.
And because of the genre conventions, they're going to die. Yeah, you
right?
can usually tell who's.
But we have spent 2 years with some of these characters. We put a lot into them, or we know that our audience is attached to them. And even though we know a lot of them were expecting this to happen, in order for us to set up what each of these deaths mean to these characters, we needed a lot of runway.
It makes every death matter.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about Hunter's whole journey around death, right? I tried to kind of to point to that where right before they go off to Busan, Hunter just who doesn't really have a strong relationship with Gwen, right? They don't spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
But I think Hunter sees in Gwen the desperation that they had experienced back when they were young in Florida, and just being like, oh, you're not coming back.
Yeah.
And kind of gives Gwen this thing that they're not even sure what it does, just being like, for me, just I know I can't stop you.
Yeah.
But I see you. That's the culmination of 3.5 movies
of different franchises,
yeah. Right? Of 2 different franchises. Jack, I mean, obviously the specific conditions of it depend on his history with Carol, but the idea that he's the guy who just has always tried to do the right thing. And he is, as we talked about in Van Helsing, the least willing to compromise his ideals, or at least the one who's always looking for the right way. And then being put in this position where it's like, yeah, you can be the best person that you could possibly be, and I don't care.
And
you're fucked anyway.
That's kind of the horror of our Dark Universe in general, is that every step of the way, the Dark Legion has fought for what they thought was the right thing to do, and in every case, either it ultimately didn't matter or it made things worse.
Yeah. It is funny that we don't actually know.
We didn't plan that.
Well, I mean, a little bit, I guess.
I guess in phase 3.
No, all the way back in House of Dracula, we have Dracula warn them about the consequences of stopping his coup.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember us discussing at that point that we wanted to pay that off. And that was not just a thing for him to, he's not bullshitting.
Yeah.
Dracula doesn't lie a lot.
No.
I'm not saying Dracula was right or anything like that. Don't get that hashtag trending. Actually, it would be great if we could get any hashtag trending. But I think that we have, there's stuff yet to come in this script that we've been building to from almost day one.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to get to it. We should take, I guess, a little break here.
Take a little water break.
We will play you, I guess, we haven't decided what goes in this break yet because this is pretty far ahead for us. But
actually, I think what we're going to hear, and I'll cut this if it's not true, the voice of Jennifer Halsey, Ella Dawson, has a little promo for her book.
Oh, great. That's great.
That she's going to tell you about. She's a published author. Her book came out this summer. She's going to tell you a little bit about it, and then you can buy it.
The book is called But How Are You Really? And it is available wherever you find books or audiobooks.
Yes.
But let's let Ella tell you about it. We'll be right back.
Hi there, my name is Ella Dawson, also known as Dr. Jennifer Halsey from the Dark Universe, and I am so excited because I just published my first book. It's called But How Are You Really? And it's about Charlotte Thorne, a bisexual, anxious young woman who reluctantly attends her college reunion. During the 4-day weekend on campus, she reconnects with her queer chosen family, tries to avoid her abusive ex-boyfriend, and plays sexually charged beer pong with the senior year situationship she maybe shouldn't have ghosted 5 years ago. It's a romance novel for cynical millennials and anti-capitalist Zoomers. Paste Magazine called it one of the most anticipated books of 2024. But How Are You Really is available in hardcover, as an ebook, or in audiobook form. Thank you for listening, and happy reading.
Welcome back to Are You Afraid of the Darkest Universe?
The answer is probably yeah. Yeah.
I hope you're afraid by now.
Fuck.
We finally scared you.
Oh.
I before we go into Act 3, I remembered what I was going to say about Marya, which is that, I was talking about finding the ways that the death gods mirror each other's journeys. And Owuo, when I was looking stuff up about him, is that he is just a creature of pain. He is just bloodthirsty. He feasts on people. He is just cruelty incarnate. And I was like, well, damn, that kind of matches Marya's journey of being preyed upon by creatures of cruelty, whether it's Dracula or the warlock that created her ring, just being treated as food, basically.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a dark culmination of that.
And this happened by accident, but I like that we have Owuo right after we have Set explaining the nature of the gods, right? And the idea that it is sort of this lust that drives them to cause pain. I think it's good to, right after that, to have immediately a personification of that idea that's very visceral and visual, right?
Yeah.
I think it's also, I'm happy that you stumbled upon Owuo because we wanted to include some death god from, like the largest, like the really, that really big continent. That's all those people that we kind of all come from. And there were options, right? Because there's a gajillion different cultures and different religions and mythologies from Africa. And for a while, we were looking at one that was like pretty, like deliberately ill-defined. Like there aren't a lot of stories, and I went looking a lot to try and find them, but I was finding mostly it's like, no, it's actually kind of a character who's not a figure that's not spoken of a lot, and these are mostly oral traditions, and so there wasn't a lot to use, which meant that we would probably either end up with a poorly defined villain or we'd be making a lot of stuff up, which I felt a little uncomfortable doing. And I'm very happy that you landed on this one.
The physical description is basically right from the Wikipedia.
Well, yes, but that's also from things.
Yeah,
and I did some further research after you picked it up, just because out of curiosity, because I like to know and see if there's anything I had to contribute. You wrote that whole section yourself. I didn't touch it, but visually distinctive, thematically distinctive, and just like, oh God, what a fucking horrible way to die.
Yeah,
and
she has probably the most horrible death.
Well, yeah, and just the idea of degloving. Marya and having him spit the ring out. Like that also makes it, we want these deaths to all be specific to the victim as well. And that is just as an idea, as how do you disarm her? You do it literally. And God, I'm also glad that we're taking a breath and we have our ad break in between. Because I think if I could change anything about this story is I would put a little bit more time between what just happened and what's about to happen.
Don't scare them too much.
No, I just think that
we give them a little space.
We need a little bit of a tonal reset here. And I would like for what you're about to hear to feel as if there is enough time for you to unclench that you can experience it and that it won't be jarring.
Act 3.
Nick Morton and Jennifer Halsey huddle close together in the back of a pickup truck on the outskirts of Accra. They're not alone. There are more tired, depressed people packed into the bay with them, locals who watch the whirlwind take their loved ones from just outside the edge of the storm. Nick and Jenny are acquainted with the feeling. Jenny looks out at the road behind them, at the ruined city in the distance.
I barely knew her. Compared to the others, she was a stranger, but it doesn't make it hurt any less.
She was one of us. She died so we could fight another day.
So did Gwen. So did Hunter. My God, Hunter, they were so young. They deserved so much more life.
Yeah, they did. Everyone does. I think that's what Marya was trying to tell us. That even after all our failures and everything we've lost, as long as we're still here and still trying, we still deserve...
Nick turns towards Jenny. She's already facing him, her lips an inch from his. They kiss. It seems to surprise both of them. At dusk, the truck pulls over beside a cheap motel. Nick and Jenny disembark. Inside, the two undress each other. They embrace passionately, not in a frenzy of attraction, but as if clinging for life. They roll onto the bed. We see Jenny's fingernails tracing down Nick's back, then digging in. It's after. Jenny lies awake on her side with Nick's arms wrapped around her. Neither has spoken in a while.
You all right?
I think part of me expected to feel empty afterwards.
Why? Because the last time?
No. Though yes, this time was much better.
Well, good. Because this whole Dark Legion thing was really just a long game to try and balance our books, orgasm-wise.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
I was afraid that letting myself feel anything but guilt or rage would betray Carol's memory. But as strange as it sounds, this is the first time since her death that I've felt close to her. I'm sorry.
I understand. She was your wife.
Jenny pulls Nick's arm tight across her chest.
We shouldn't dawdle too long here. For all we know, Set could be opening death's door this second.
Nick tilts his head down and sees that the mark of Set has reappeared on her neck.
The mark is back. As long as you're alive, they shouldn't be able to unleash hell.
Is that something you learned from Set while you were his host?
No, it's something I made up so you would go to sleep. Now, go to sleep. We're gonna need it. We have a world to save in the morning.
Jenny exhales, closes her eyes, and smiles. It's a real, honest-to-God smile. The camera pulls away from her face and rotates around the two of them to look at Nick's back. On the back of his neck, the mark of Set glows white. In the underground temple, Ahmanet sits naked on the edge of the altar where, hours earlier, she was transformed from a reanimated human woman to a living god. Adelaide lies behind her in repose, also undressed. Ahmanet's dress, which was made of one long, continuous silk ribbon, slithers up her leg and wraps around her body.
Where are you going?
Now that the world is mine, I want to survey my kingdom.
It's our wedding night. We should be together.
Then you may accompany me.
Before Ahmanet can step away from the altar, Adelaide quickly claps a hand around her wrist.
We'll go at first light. Tonight, your place is with me.
Adelaide cocks an eyebrow, and Ahmanet's ribbon dress falls limp around her ankles. She pulls Ahmanet in for a kiss. Over Adelaide's shoulder, we see Ahmanet's eyes slowly open. Her brow furrows. At dawn, Nick and Jenny stand outside their roadside motel, dressed for desert adventure. Jenny readies herself for another teleportation spell. Nick rests a hand on her shoulder.
Take from me this time.
Nick, a spell like this cost years of your life.
You opened 4 of them yesterday, and I don't plan on outliving you. Let me take this one.
Jenny hesitates, then rests her hand on Nick's and nods. Jenny reaches forward and cuts the air in front of her with an invisible scalpel. Nick's body tenses, feeling the strain on his soul. It's new to him, more shocking than it's been to Jenny. but he bears it. An oozing tear in space pulls open. On the other side is downtown Cairo, a modern metropolis that is, thank God, still bustling with living people. Hand in hand, Jenny and Nick step through. The wound closes behind them.
Ahmanet steps out of the temple into the morning sun. She closes her eyes and looks up, savoring its warmth, stretching her limbs. Adelaide emerges from the darkness behind her.
Good morning, goddess.
She reaches out to touch Ahmanet's shoulder, but before she can, Ahmanet rises into the air. She floats higher and higher, arms outstretched, eyes closed and face towards the sun, and we zoom out to see that they've been inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. In a wide shot, it looks like Ahmanet is hovering just a few feet above the pyramid's peak. She touches back down in front of Adelaide, facing away from her in the direction of Cairo.
How does it feel, love?
The way it has always felt. Like it is mine.
Adelaide puts an arm around Ahmanet's waist.
Like it's ours. And only 2 souls stand in our way.
Ahmanet doesn't look at her.
So, what are we waiting for? Let's claim them.
Nick and Jenny walk through downtown Cairo, keeping their heads down so they're not recognized. The atmosphere is morose, not just between them, but everyone in the city. Where do we start?
If I had to take a guess, Coptic Cairo. It's the oldest section of the city and home to 3 of the world's major religions. Plenty of ancient holy sites where they could summon the door.
Time is short. I'd like if we could go off of a little more than a guess. Jenny looks up to the sky.
How's that then?
Ahmanet levitates in the distance 100 feet in the air, crossing the Nile from the Giza side. She's flanked by 1,000 crows that block out the sun and cast all of Cairo in shadow. Coptic Cairo that way? Jenny nods. I should really know by now not to doubt you. Nick steps in front of Jenny.
Wait, Nick.
He turns to her, but she turns him back away from her. There's a faint glow coming from under his scarf. She pulls it down to reveal the mark of Set. I was waiting for this.
We should think about this. If all they need to open the door is our souls, maybe we shouldn't turn ourselves over to them on a silver platter.
No. I'm done running. It doesn't matter anyway. They'll find us the same way they found everyone else. We go down fighting. So what do you say? Round 2? Jenny smiles weakly.
If you're up for it, cowboy.
I love you, Jenny. There's no romance in this, just fact.
I love you too.
A few minutes later, Nick and Jenny pass through the south gate of the Babylon fortress into a round courtyard lined with crumbling pillars.
For a structure built in the 2nd century AD, Babylon Fortress is gorgeously preserved. That's true. Its centerpiece is a 3-story circular tower built of maroon and white Roman brick, specced with doors and portholes at every level. In the ground-level courtyard in the center of the tower, Ahmanet lands softly as the storm of crows around her condenses to a black-clad Adelaide Van Helsing. Adelaide stands behind Ahmanet and wraps her arms around her. Adelaide smiles and takes in her surroundings. Her voice echoes off the stone.
We know you're here! Come out and die!
Nick steps into view, now standing confidently in a 2nd-story porthole looking down at Adelaide and Ahmanet.
You sure this is how you want to spend your honeymoon? I hear Aruba's nice.
Ahmanet scowls.
You could have been the one to rule beside me. My chosen.
And I told you then, we're just never gonna happen, princess.
I am Queen Ahmanet, goddess of death.
See? You traded up. Why hold a grudge? Let's all just be happy for each other.
He's stalling.
Adelaide steps in front of Ahmanet and extends an arm towards Nick. An inky black tentacle of pure death stretches from it, the kind that Nick himself once used in a car chase in Romania. It races towards Nick, who ducks out of the window and disappears into the walls of the fortress. The arm of death follows him as he runs through the stone corridors. He baseball slides through a cracked wall, and death loses track of him. Back in the center of the tower, Adelaide blows out her breath.
You've already lost, Morton. You sealed the fate of this world the moment you defied one of its gods. You, Imhotep, that fool Dracula, you proved that it was time to raise this entire crop before it all went to rot.
You mean before we became powerful enough to defeat you? I've got news for you, Set. We always were. I already proved it.
Ahmanet and Adelaide stand back to back in the center of the tower, looking for the source of Nick's voice. The look on their faces must be frustration. After all, it couldn't be fear, could it?
You were there when it happened. Both of you. Ahmanet beat the hell out of me, Set climbed inside my body, and I still won. And I didn't do it with a sacred dagger or a magic spell.
At the tower's highest point, Nick Morton looks down at the goddesses below.
I did it with love.
The goddesses look up at him with fury in their eyes.
Though to be fair,
with their attention directed upwards, neither Ahmanet nor Adelaide notices as the air behind them slices open and a pair of arms reach through the wound.
Magic's pretty good too.
Dr. Jennifer Halsey grabs both Ahmanet and Adelaide by the backs of their heads, her hands glowing a deep, deep purple. The goddesses scream as bands of black lightning scorch their bodies and penetrate their skin. They're paralyzed from the magical current running through them. Jenny grits her teeth. Her eyes are glowing black, the veins in her face and hands burning red. Adelaide struggles through her paralysis and reaches a hand towards Ahmanet's. She grabs it, and the goddess's eyes meet. Is this a tender moment? No. Adelaide squeezes Ahmanet's hand tight and then swings her hard into Jenny, breaking the spell. Jenny and Ahmanet both tumble to the ground.
Jenny!
Nick starts running back down the fortress. Adelaide takes a knee, recovering herself. Through labored breath and unbridled rage, she exclaims,
Kill her! Morton is mine.
Adelaide leaps into a second-story porthole in the castle wall.
Nick rushes quietly through the corridors of the tower, ducking behind walls when he can. He can hear Adelaide somewhere nearby, getting closer. Cross-cut between the two of them, hunter and prey.
Face your end with dignity, Morton.
Come on, is this any way to treat your old roommate?
You dragged me out through your nose and imprisoned me in a jar.
And how did we get out of that one? Together. Nick is in some kind of chapel now, stone steps leading up to an altar on one wall. He hears Adelaide let out a grunt of frustration and ducks behind the steps just as the wall blows open. Adelaide steps through the rubble into the room and smiles.
I can smell you.
Nick looks desperately at the exit on the other side of the room. No way to get there without being seen.
In the center of the tower, Jenny gets into a fighting stance as Ahmanet approaches her, slowly.
You have such fury, such hatred. If I'd known this years ago, I would have chosen you.
My loss, I'm sure.
Ahmanet advances. Jenny backpedals.
Loss. A word you know very well. Submit to me, and I can end your suffering.
I'm through suffering.
Jenny lobs a ball of magical energy at Ahmanet as forcefully as a major league pitcher. It hits her below her left shoulder, but instead of knocking her back, it just passes through her, her flesh turning to ash at its impact and then reforming. Ahmanet smiles at her. In a flash, she wraps her hand around Jenny's throat.
Not yet.
Ahmanet lifts Jenny by the neck over her head. Jenny struggles, her legs pedaling for purchase and finding nothing. Her mouth is moving, muttering. No sound comes out. She closes her eyes. She goes limp. An impossibly dark storm cloud rolls in overhead. Ahmanet looks up as the cloud blots out the morning sun. She lowers Jenny to study her face. Jenny's eyes open, totally black. Ahmanet gasps. A bolt of lightning crashes from the cloud above, striking Ahmanet and Jenny and sending dust and rubble flying through the tower. When the dust clears, the tower floor has been blown open, revealing a cavern below.
In the chapel, Nick takes advantage of the sudden darkness and runs across the room to the exit. Adelaide hears him and fires a black cloud of death before she's distracted by the crack of the black lightning. Nick makes it through to the next room and looks out the window, seeing the ruined floor and exposed cavern. Jenny!
The dark cloud breaks and sunlight illuminates a buried shrine underneath Babylon Fortress, untouched for centuries. It's cavernous, unfurnished. There are no shelves of relics, no altar, no symbols of faith. The floor of the cavern is flooded with a few inches of dirty water, which reflects the sunlight back up around the room. Jenny struggles to her feet, standing over the limp, smoking body of Ahmanet. Jenny's skin, hair, and clothes are scorched, but not mortally. However, we can see the toll of her magics is catching up to her. Her hair has turned bone white, and the skin on her face and hands is loosening. She allows herself a deep breath, then looks up and sees something against one of the curved walls. It's the only item of note in the entire room. A door. The door. Ancient, wooden, with a rusted metal latch. There are 6 symbols burned into the wood, 4 of them glowing like embers in a fireplace. The mark of Set. Jenny approaches it, slowly, as if drawn to it. She rests her ear against its ancient wood. Something on the other end knocks hard. Jenny stumbles back away from it. The latch rattles. Jenny turns around, only to be caught instantly by Ahmanet's hand around her throat.
Meanwhile, Nick keeps making his way around the edge of the second floor. He stops in one corridor and looks out the porthole down into the pit, just in time to see Ahmanet choking Jenny. No. He looks up and sees Adelaide also looking through a porthole across from him. Nick looks to his right and sees a stone staircase leading down to the cavern. It's about halfway between where he is and where Ahmanet is. They lock eyes. Adelaide smiles. Nick breaks from the window and full-on Tom Cruise runs through the corridors to the staircase. On the other side of the tower, Adelaide transforms herself into a solid mass of crows that fly at full speed toward the stairs to meet him. Nick sprints the staircase just ahead, but then, through the room on the other side, the wall of crows appears, pouring through the doorway and then filling the corridor wall to wall. They're moving too fast, ready to tear him apart. Without slowing, Nick suddenly jukes to one side, where the floor of the corridor has collapsed. He leaps headfirst through the hole, tumbling down the hill of rubble just as the mass of crows rips their way through the air where he just was. He rolls his way down to the ground floor and comes to a stop, bloody and dazed, but alive.
Down in the cavern, Ahmanet, fully healed, once again lifts Jenny by the throat and slams her against death's door. The glowing mark on her neck aligns with a counterpart burning on the door behind her. As Jenny struggles, Ahmanet leans in to speak into her ear.
Bow for your queen.
Ahmanet swings Jenny around, her hand now on the back of her neck. She steps on Jenny's calf, bringing her down to one knee. It splashes in the water. Jenny struggles. She can't stand.
Lower.
Ahmanet kicks Jenny again and falls to her hands and knees. Ahmanet places her foot on Jenny's back.
Lower.
Ahmanet presses down on Jenny's back, pushing her slowly into the water. Jenny strains, trying to muster the strength to resist. Her eyes glow briefly, then Ahmanet presses down with all her weight. Jenny is face down in the water, struggling beneath Ahmanet's heel, unable to lift her head above the surface.
Above them, on the ground floor, Nick shakily gets to his feet. He staggers to the edge of the hole leading down into the cavern.
Jenny's splashing grows weaker. Weaker still. Ahmanet sneers. The fifth symbol on death's door illuminates. Nick Morton slides down a pile of loose stone and rubble down into the chamber beneath Babylon Fortress. He splashes into the shallow water and starts searching the chamber in a panic.
Jenny? Jenny, where are you?
He takes a step forward. His boot catches something. He looks down. Floating in the water below, face up, is the lifeless body of Jenny Halsey.
No, please, not again.
Nick falls to his knees and starts compressing her chest, which only pushes her back under the surface of the water. He tries mouth to mouth. No effect. His calm long gone. Nick screams into Jenny's face.
Wake up!
8 years ago, this was how he, as Set, returned Jenny to life. But this time, nothing happens. He's just a man, and Dr. Jennifer Halsey is dead. Nick breaks down, pulling Jenny's body up to him, crying into her shoulder. Above him, Adelaide floats down through the hole in the ceiling.
You see, you're only ever delaying the inevitable. It was always going to end like this.
Adelaide's feet land on the surface of the water. From out of the shadows behind her emerge Ahmanet, Satan, Mictlantecuhtli, Hades, and Owuo, who has reduced his size to a more manageable 7 feet.
All you've done is prolong your suffering.
Nick, his face streaked with sweat, blood, dirt, and tears, looks up from Jenny and stares defiantly at Adelaide.
You're wrong. What I had before, that was suffering. This was joy, purpose, family. I lived a whole damn life these past 8 years. That was worth fighting for.
Adelaide glowers. Her words can't break his spirit. She turns her back on him and walks towards the door, where 5 out of 6 marks of Set are glowing red. She traces the final mark with her fingertips. The mark on Nick's neck glows. She turns to Nick again and takes a few steps forward, standing evenly between him and the door.
Your fight is over, Nick Morton. Your world is over. Yours will be the final soul to unlock the door. A soul tied to my own, soaked in the magic of death. You will be...
Bang! Adelaide stops. The sound came from behind her. All of the gods take notice. Someone is banging on death's door from the other side. Bang!
What in hell?
The door swings open hard. We see that the marks of Set are also burned on the opposite side, still only 5 out of 6 of them glowing. Their light, however, is washed out by the red glow coming from the doorway. A backlit figure steps through. Adelaide's jaw drops.
You! How dare you!
A fleck of blood. Adelaide stops cold. Her head tilts. Black fluid drips from her neck. Adelaide's head lands in the shallow water with a splash and bobs beneath her floating feet. Heavy boots slosh through the murk. They belong to a man wearing a suit of metal and leather armor, cobbled together from pieces from across the world and across time, stained with blood both ancient and fresh. The man raises his sword with his one remaining arm. The edge of the blade reflects the fire from the door behind him. It's Dracula.
Nick Morton, still holding Jenny's body, rises to his feet. The other gods watch in awe as Dracula licks Adelaide's blood from his sword, then spits it into the water in disgust. The taste is wrong. He looks down at Adelaide's head, face down in the water, oozing a thick black substance.
Set?
He looks up at Nick, piecing things together, then shrugs.
2 down.
He directs his attention back towards Nick and steps over Adelaide's body, sword ready. Nick backs up. Whoa, Drac, now's not the... He stops, looking over Dracula's shoulder. Adelaide's headless body has risen to its feet, holding her soaking wet head. Dracula turns to her, once again in a battle stance.
You presume to kill death so easily, Count? How many times must you learn this lesson? Nobody, least of all the spurned child of a lesser demon, shall ever usurp my throne.
A hand reaches out to grab Adelaide's shoulder.
And what about the child of a pharaoh?
Ahmanet grabs Adelaide's body and yanks it backwards. The shock of it loosens Adelaide's grip on her head, which falls back into the water. Her body wavers in the doorway, arms pinwheeling over hell. Ahmanet kicks her in the chest, sending her falling down among the legions of felled warriors below. Dracula backs away to stand next to Nick, both of them watching in shock. Ahmanet picks up her wife's head.
My queen, what are you doing? What about our love? What about our destiny?
Love. The love of a princess is a commodity to exchange for power. Power which is now mine. As for destiny, I've only ever had one. The throne.
She throws Adelaide's head through the door and slams it shut. As soon as she does, the 6th symbol begins to glow. The ground shakes. Death's door begins to disappear, merging with the stone around it, leaving only the 6 symbols that now pulse with a red, fiery light.
What the hell have you done this time, Morton?
Nick touches the back of his neck. The mark is gone. Adelaide must have been marked too.
What?
The 2 enemies face each other. The last time they squared off like this, they both carried the power of gods. Now they are merely men. We lost. Ahmanet and the death gods rise into the air, leaving Nick and Dracula behind. The camera follows them as they take their place on the top level of the fortress, looking down at Cairo. All around the city, sinkholes are opening in the ground, swallowing buildings, cars, and people, all of them falling into the raging infernos below. People scream, sirens wail, dust and debris choke the air. We focus on one of the sinkholes in the middle of downtown. The dust has settled, the shock has passed, and things are strangely quiet. The crowd of cowering citizens nearby cautiously edges towards the pit, looking down into the flames. A police officer takes the lead, walking up to the very edge and looking down. What he sees makes him scream. We look from his POV to see demons of all kinds of horrific design clambering up the walls of the pit. The first demon grabs the ankle of the cop and tosses him down into the pit. Then dozens of them overtake the lip, leaping on top of the people and tearing them to pieces. We flash to similar scenes in New York City, Paris, London, Geneva, Portland. Chaos as hell swarms out of the fiery depths.
Cut to a graveyard in rural Pennsylvania. A young woman bends down to place a bouquet of flowers over a fresh grave. Behind her is a much older plot for someone buried decades ago. The grass in front of the tombstone starts to shift. The young woman is too preoccupied with her grief to notice as a rotting hand reaches up through the dirt.
Cut to an SUV full of young 20-somethings careening down a rain-soaked dirt road in the woods. The rain pours so hard and the night is so dark that they can hardly see anything in front of them. The driver twists the wheel all the way around as a new pit opens in the road ahead of them. The car cuts a new path through the woods, narrowly missing trees, chased by a horde of demons emerging from the hole behind them. The camera lifts through the trees, revealing a Gothic manor standing tall on a hill in the distance.
Cut to a farmhouse in Iowa. An 8-year-old boy runs carefree through the tall rows of corn behind his home. He's wearing a Little League baseball uniform. He hears a rustling nearby. Someone else is in the corn with him. Dad? Is that you? Suddenly, a scabby hand reaches out from the rows behind the boy and grabs him by the shoulder. Before he can even scream, the boy is pulled backwards and disappears into the corn.
Cut to Vatican City. A line of priests stand outside the walls. They carry swords that look ancient, rusted, and not at all battle-ready. Neither do the priests. They're old men, frail, here only out of their divine duty. They stand trembling, whispering prayers as a horde of demons charges their way. One of the priests, a middle-aged man, cuts from the line and runs away, back through the gates into the city. Above Cairo, Ahmanet watches the carnage. A tear falls down her face.
It's beautiful.
Behind her, the other 4 death gods kneel, their heads bowed. Ahmanet turns and faces them and points at Hades.
You, Hades.
Yes, my queen.
What is our next step in this grand plan? What do we do now?
Now, we wait for every last human and angel to be claimed by the legions of hell, however long that takes.
Yes.
Ahmanet turns and looks out at the screaming city again.
And then we start it all anew.
We see now through her eyes. The demons are gone, as are Cairo and Giza as we know them, replaced with primitive settlements. Slaves work at the mercy of their masters, pushing limestone blocks up wooden ramps. The camera follows these workers up their rudimentary scaffolding to reveal that what they're building is not a pyramid, but a statue. At the top level, sculptors work with picks and hammers to carve out the shape of a face. The face of their god of death, Ahmanet. Cut to black. To be concluded in Dark Legion, Hell on Earth.
Woo!
No mid-credits scene.
No mid-credits scene. I don't think there's one in Infinity War either.
But
I think that's one of those last sort of like, gut punches there, is that they make you wait for the whole credits for something. I want to take a moment before we go off, because there will be
credits.
There will be credits.
Yeah.
That I want to take a moment to congratulate everyone who guessed that Hell on Earth would be the title. I don't think that the one that I found on the Discord was from Balthazar, but I noticed that the phrase Hell on Earth was used a lot in various posts. So I think a lot of people, was just probably a favorite to guess. So that alone does not win Balthazar the gold medal for predicting shit in this episode. But I do have to hand it to him because post-credits scene. An old cathode ray tube TV monitor clicks on. An image forms into the fuzzy low resolution one would expect from a 70s news broadcast. The image, however, is unquestionably current. It's an NBC News bulletin with the chyron Hell on Earth. Flesh-eating demons attack cities worldwide. The show's anchor, unshaven and underslept, jumps to his feet in response to some disturbance behind the camera. But before he can get out from behind his desk, he is tackled by a massive arachnid with a different vicious, toothy mouth on the end of each of its legs. We pull back to see that this is one of dozens of old CRT monitors, some of which are playing the news, some of which are displaying old green-on-black computer command lines and output. The monitors are flipping through personnel profiles, pixelated green and black photographs accompanied by basic data and statistics. We see only a few of them clearly. Quasimodo, formerly known as William Frankenstein. Location, Laguerne, Switzerland. Peyton Westlake, aka Dark Girl. Location, Los Angeles, USA. Alias, Sophie Midwich. Location unknown. One of them reads, Database export complete. Total local interface shutdown in 90 seconds. The number counts down. Following the rows of monitors, we see row after row of massive analog computer banks with spinning spools of magnetic tape. One by one, their drives stop spinning, their lights click off, and their monitors go dark, followed by the nearest overhead lights. Soon, the entire cavernous laboratory is dark. Cut to the American Rockies, where an enormous facility is almost totally camouflaged into the mountains. Its massive, rust-covered doors creak open, and out steps a young woman in hiking gear who has not had a professional haircut in years. It's Alexis Rogan, portrayed in the film by Hunter Schafer. She carries a clunky old laptop under her arm. Alexis looks out and sees a tower of smoke on the horizon. She sighs. Cut to black. The Dark Legion will return in Mystery Men.
Is Mystery Men universal?
Yes, it is.
Hell yeah.
So...
mystery.
Well,
thems.
nobody suggested that Mystery Men would be the title of the surprise
how could you
fifth
guess
one
that?
because it's a mystery. I have to say, Balthazar, you guessed that exact thing
That premise
would be the post-credit scene of this one, and we were so fucking baffled.
Yeah, because we had already figured it out.
We already figured it out, and we just see this, and I think I screen capped it and being like, motherfucker. So you get the gold medal. Okay.
Now, before we talk, we should shout out our cast and our producers.
Yes. We are so grateful to have our lovely cast for this. Big special thanks to Ella Dawson as Jenny Halsey. Really big role. This was the kind of thing where, like, if we didn't already have a cast to do it, like, be like, okay, the second lead, I feel like that would usually be me.
Yeah, I don't think I've told Ella yet how big her role is. In this.
Gosh, like you're the co-lead of the film, and we haven't heard your performance yet as we're recording this, but I'm sure you've done a fantastic job, and thank you so much for your work. Rachel Millman as Gwen. I always hear her voice when I write her. I'm so glad that Rachel is back. We have Kendra Wells as Hunter. I'm sorry if I take time to say a nice thing about everybody and we haven't, and then it'll take too long.
We love all of them.
Suffice to say, we love all
They're
of you.
all our friends.
Gita Jackson as Marya, Joe Stando as Jack. We have Patrick Willems coming in as Satan. Thank you, Patrick, for coming back. And we have Sarah Norcross as Lavelle.
Mm-hmm.
Is that everyone?
Our villains.
Our villains. Those are us.
No, our main villains.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Our main villains, we have Merritt K as Adelaide, and we have Frankie Starker as Ahmanet. Congrats to you, Queen. Gosh, what a...
Exec producers?
Our executive producers, right? Because we recorded our thanks on the previous episode. Let's give a big shout out. Thank you so much to studio executives, Andy from the Discord, Bill French, Beerus, Joe Valiant, Cadle, and Tom Webster. Thank you so much for contributing at the $25 a month level. Executive producers, Brian Egan, Callie, Mar Bendlar, Matt Thackeray, and Soonmot. Thank you so much for contributing at the $15 a month level. I hope that you all still want to support us after we've just put you through. But frankly, I think that I'm really happy with the way that we're able to underline why this is not simply a misery machine.
And that this isn't the end.
It's also
and there's
not
actually a
the
lot
end.
to be excited about.
Yes, I think so. I think that we've laid a lot of groundwork as much as, and I know that the one that we have planned after this is very different, and we want them all to be different from each other. I am so, there are things in Hell on Earth that I have been just so fucking excited to write for what is now years. But speaking of that, let's talk about the end of this, because you pitched the final beat of this film when we were writing House of Dracula.
I wanted this movie to end from House of Dracula with our only remaining cast members being Nick Morton and Dracula, both of them mortal. I wanted them to be the last two standing with no powers and nobody else.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been. But a piece of this that actually didn't come together until the very last minute, because you will not hear about this on our planning episode, is Ahmanet killing Set and becoming the Queen of Death. We realized that as we were writing, that of course that makes the most sense given Ahmanet's arc. because we had sort of, I feel like even me and Van Helsing were kind of floundering with what to do with Ahmanet, but the answer's been there the whole time. She's always wanted the same thing, which is the power that was taken from her.
And I got excited because I wrote a lot of the Ahmanet sections, and I was really enjoying playing the idea of Ahmanet as like what drives her in the first place, right? What do we know about her? She was supposed to be queen. It was taken from her. She will stop at nothing to get it back. She made a pact with death. She murdered her family.
Yes.
She killed a baby.
A baby.
And yet there are still those in our fan community who stand. And my thinking was, okay, why? Well, her thing really is that she fucking knows the game. And very nearly played it better than anyone had ever played it before. Right? And so the idea that as much as like her sort of seduction of Nick in The Mummy there are moments where it feels sincere, right? And maybe parts of it are, but what she's lusting for isn't Nick, and it's not set. It's power. It's power, right? And so I liked the idea of letting her have this sort of killing stroke that she was probably planning from fucking day one. However many thousands of years ago that took place, I forget because we fudged the timeline.
3,000.
Okay, well, the way that we fudged the timeline is that the time period that is explicitly stated in the 2017 Mummy and the time period in which Imhotep, both the character from the 99 Mummy and the historical character on which he's based, the historical figure on which he's based, they are centuries apart. I think like 12 centuries apart.
But 3,000 years ago is generic enough that you can give a couple century difference.
So what's 1,200 years?
Yeah.
But that was really fun, and I did have to imagine when Ahmanet has her... you wrote the scene where Ahmanet finally does this sort of killing stroke, and we both fudged with the dialogue on it. But the moment when she kicks Ahmanet kicks Adelaide through the door, I can't help but imagine the self-professed biggest fan of Ahmanet in our Discord just pumping her fist
pumping,
just being like, yes! And if there's one person doing that, then there will be lots of people doing that.
Now, speaking of, I think you really showed your dedication to making this a good film because you even rewatched the ending of The Mummy 2017 to make sure the moment between Nick and Jenny was right.
Well, because you suggested that Nick should find Jenny's body floating in the water the way he did in The Mummy.
I just left it as a note for you in the doc. I didn't even text you about it. I just put it in the doc like, hey, this is something we have to do.
I take that stuff seriously. I would want you to read the notes if I leave you, right? And so looking at that, I'm like, okay, well, let me make sure I really capture the mood and the image and see if there's anything else there to mine. And that led to a couple other echoes throughout the film that we ended up peppering in.
Yeah.
This is really like where rooting our whole saga in The Mummy is. Like we're talking about the Van Helsing feeling like it's a follow-up to The Mummy. This now, I now feel like I'd felt a little bad about Van Helsing feeling like the season finale. Now that feels like that's a precursor to this. Like
there's somehow still meat on that bone.
I know.
We keep finding narrative heft to pull from The Mummy.
I gotta tell you, I feel tempted to watch it again now. Not just out of responsibility to the narrative, but because like I watched that climax in isolation and I thought this is kind of good. Which you've never heard me say before about that movie. But I think it's also like we have put a lot of ourselves, we projected a lot onto those characters. I mean, Jenny Halsey, who we did not take a moment to mourn, by the way, because there's too much going on.
Yeah.
She's a character we started with where we have nothing to work with. Like that character in the original movie is a nothing character.
I mean, same with Nick.
And same with Nick, right? And granted, with Nick, we had the shortcut of Nick's just you, as far as I write Nick, and this is Dalton. And you make it easy. Yeah, that's right. And you can run very fast. But his voice is very easy to write because I spend a lot of time talking to you.
Yes.
And because the way that you write is sort of almost like a slightly cranked up Dalton. And so I always know exactly how corny the jokes should be. And so that's easy for me to invest in. Jenny, I mean, you didn't hear me doing the performance in this episode because Ella will be dubbing it in. I've performed Jenny Halsey in a lot of episodes now.
Yeah.
I think I have read Jenny.
Because you're the only one that can do a British accent.
That's right. I've read, and can I? I've read Jenny in every episode she's appeared in. And so I always, even when we're going to overdub it, I always go all the way, because I think that's how you get the best performance out of a rating out of the show. And also because I don't want to half-ass it. I like playing Jenny.
And I feel like she's maybe had the biggest character arc of almost anyone, like in terms of how different she is now from she was at the beginning.
Well, let's draw back the curtain, as we often do, as we're here to do. We, I think, have sort of played tug of war with this character in a way that has been good for her.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we first started, like I did the next big story with her in Jekyll X Hyde. And that, I don't think added tremendously to her, other than giving her sort of some more action lead stuff, adding to her professionalism, her competence, and fleshing out her loyalty to Jekyll. But in House of Dracula, I think we both saw her kind of as a utility player, right?
Mm-hmm.
She could accomplish a lot. She delivers exposition. She does good action. But what really started to shift her into the character we know now is when you suggested that she and Carol should hook up.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was imagining that we were going to play out more of the Nick and Jenny stuff. And it was your idea to be like, I don't know, we have these two characters who serve similar purposes. What if we hook them up and they can kind of serve as a unit? And that put her into, it basically made her, revealed to us the character that we know. Not just, oh, she's bi, but like giving her someone to protect became her downfall.
Which,
right? It gave her life, but it also destroyed her life.
Which goes to show that, like, I feel like sometimes in these team movies, you just sort of look at people as what purpose on the team do they serve. And in this case, we had two people kind of serving the same purpose. And so a lot of storytellers would be like, well, we got to get rid of one.
Yeah.
We got to, kill them off or write them off or something like that.
But we enjoyed Carol too much.
In this case,
we inherited Jenny, and it didn't feel right to do, especially since we killed Lavelle.
Yeah. So by putting them together, it actually unlocked both of them in entirely new ways that made them each unique and essential characters to the universe, way beyond just their role on the team.
And what's nice about the structure of this kind of shared universe, it's cool how much we're learning about how this is or can be done, is that once you put them as the lead of their own movie, then you have to break them out of simply their utility in a team.
Yeah.
And that was when I got them in Phantom the Phantom, my thing of, okay, well, how would this relationship work? Let's give them each their own role, not necessarily just in what they can do, but in what they mean to each other, what their values are. And, as I like to do, I'm like, let's put their relationship on the rocks. Let's put it through a little bit of a trial, right? And that ended up creating the conflict that you would later capitalize on in Love Never Dies, where Jenny and Carol love each other so much, but they have but Jenny does have this thing, which is an extension of the thing that we gave to her in giving her this relationship is something to look after, something to worry about, and something to go overboard about.
Yeah.
And now we have kind of brought things a little bit full circle. I know that, and one of the reasons we did this, and we'll talk about it in the episode you'll hear 2 weeks from now, putting Jenny and Nick back together feels a little weird. I think it feels weird to them.
Yeah.
Right? I think there's a degree to which we expect people to reject it.
Yeah.
But I actually like it more in the execution than I thought I would in theory. I didn't suggest that in the planning of this because I wanted it to work. I wanted it to be a sort of thing that they kind of fall into. There's a theme that we talked about in that planning episode that I actually think we sort of inverted in the writing of the story. I wanted to write about the strange feeling of settling for whatever win you can get.
Yeah.
And that ended up not being what the story is about at all. This story is about celebrating the fight and the people you fight with, and that it's so much less bleak than what I was talking about. At least
and
in
Nick
my
and
mind.
Jenny have a real love for each other.
They do, and and I don't have to tell this to you as you're practicing polyamorous, but even I, who am just like, I don't feel any pull to go and seek further companionship romantically. Even I don't think that there's such a thing as a one true pairing or a soulmate, right? I think I cannot imagine a partner who would feel more perfect for me and who I would feel more perfect with than my wife. But mathematically, you can find happiness with more than one person.
Well, and also, I don't even think, they're not if Jenny had survived, I don't necessarily even know that they would have kept a relationship
maybe
going.
not, but they needed each other there,
in
right?
that moment,
and they love each other very much.
Well, in that moment, yeah, there's like you have some great dialogue in there. The whole thing of like, I expected to feel empty, which I think is also kind of you speaking. Like, I expected the scene to feel empty, and it doesn't.
And it doesn't.
But it's in these moments of tremendous grief, I think sometimes we do seek this sort of cheap thrill of sexual pleasure, validation, chemicals getting released, whatever, physical touch. But even if that impulse is a very base desire, these are two people that feel safe with each other, that feel comfortable with each other, that already feel intimate with each other, and already have been intimate with each other.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it ends up, even if like that impulse is very animalistic, I don't think it ends up feeling hollow.
No,
because of the relationship that's underlying it. I
think these were two people who were taking care of each other, and it's the kind of thing where it's like, oh, okay, well, if there's an OTP, obviously it's Carol and Jenny.
Yeah,
Carol's gone.
Yeah,
and life has to go on.
Yeah,
right. They have to live. That's what we ended up finding as the message of this whole movie is that
you have to live till the last moment.
You have to live till the last one. You can't ever decide that you lose when you've decided you've lost. Especially when it's something so uphill and an absolute win is maybe not even possible. There's a thing, I've had to think about as becoming a parent and also somebody who has a pretty grim outlook on what our future looks like in terms of our climate and our political climate. You have to decide, especially if you're going to bring a new life into the world. You have to decide that you are all in on there being a future and on living it as best you can. And that's the leap that with Marya's help as someone who learned to believe this, I think probably pretty recently.
Yeah.
That Nick and Jenny make, that leap that like Gwen was struggling and really couldn't make in the end of the day. I think that's important. I think that's really important now. And it's something that I look for all the time. Like I get difficulty. It's easier now because I can look at my son and say, how can a future that contains something so beautiful be so ugly, right? I think that's what they find in each other here.
Yeah.
And of course, then Jenny dies and hell breaks loose.
Hey, nice tie-in to my single. No, so hopefully you found that sort of positive message undergirding a lot of terrible things. And I think that's a good message to end on. Let's sort of recap some things for Picture Lock. Jack is dead. Gwen is dead. Hunter is dead. Marya is dead. Jenny is dead. The only people left standing in this film at the end are Nick and Dracula, both of them powerless. Adelaide/Set, also dead, banished to hell. And now Ahmanet is the queen of the death gods reigning on Earth. Hell has broken loose and demons are overtaking every square foot of our planet.
We've seen little teases of the 5 intervening Phase 4 projects that we have. Well, besides the holiday special, which will take place a previous Christmas, I think.
Yes, I think that's the idea.
Yes, because I don't think anyone's I don't think they're even going to be acknowledging Christmas on Earth this year.
Yeah.
So we've seen a little peek at Night of the Living Dead, a little peek at The Old Dark House, a little peek at The Exorcist, and a little peek at Field of Nightmares. And at the very end, we learn that the previously unnamed hacker character from Colossus: The Forbidden Project has escaped the giant nuclear computer hidden in the Colorado Rockies with dossiers of various characters we did not see in this film.
Yes,
and
we're going to see what you do with that.
Plans to do something big in what will be Mystery Men. I'm not going to say much more about it. I think that if you know much about Mystery Men, you can probably infer why it's called that, what that might mean. But if not, you can only have to wait, 4 or 5 months to find out.
I think we need to woke it up and call it Mystery Them.
There's the people in Mystery Men aren't all men either.
That's true.
There's the bowler, and I haven't decided for sure, but if I'm going to import one character from the original Mystery Men, it's going to be the bowler. I might, if we're doing fan servicey shit, I might even have it be Janine Garofalo.
I mean, love Janine Garofalo.
How can you not?
So we've still got a lot more story to tell.
So much.
We're still
more.
going to be around for almost. I mean, we're going to be around for a lot longer.
Well,
but
yeah, because we have plans beyond this. But
these character stories will continue for almost another year before we move on to season 5.
Yes. We are currently, I think if the schedule runs the way it does right now, Hell on Earth will be out in late May or June, depending on how things line up. We will have to make sure we responsibly manage this workload.
Yeah.
But here's an exciting thing, is that for the first time ever, we are doing this more like the way a studio does. And we can start working on Hell on Earth like tomorrow if we want to.
We can.
We can
but
be
will we?
We can be working on this script all year, Dalton. And then we will not be in the hell we've been in this week.
Well, let's see if we do that.
Let's see if we do that. But in any case, in 2 weeks, you will hear the conversation that Dalton and I had that kickstarted the writing of this episode you just heard. 2 weeks after that, we will have a guest we have not yet booked.
Yep.
And then 2 weeks after that, you'll get my take on Night of the Living Dead.
You better get a move on.
Oh, I'm stoked.
Those.
I'm very excited. I
And
have no ideas.
In the meantime,
all my energy's been put into this.
Come process your grief on the Discord, patreon.com/Dylan and Dalton. First week is free. We will also still be doing our movie nights and our bonus podcasts. And you can maybe lighten the load by listening to our Mamma Mia pitch, which was much lighter than this.
There's never been a better time to do your 7-day trial. There's so much to do, even just in real time in those 7 days. We have a year's worth of the bonus pod stacked up now. And gosh, if you want people to talk to about this stuff who are passionate, you will find them, and they're lovely.
Stream my new single, Hell Breaks Loose.
Yes, please do. It's been out for 3 weeks now.
Yes.
It's probably already topping the charts. Everyone's
That's right.
heard it. Dalton.
Everyone's heard it, but listen to it again.
You've
Follow
got
us on Spotify
fucking
and stuff.
feature on a Meek Mill track or something.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Stream the music video. The full album comes October 11th. So there will be more songs in a break at a future episode. I hope. But that's it for tonight. We have been podcasting for like 5.5 hours.
Yep.
It is time to close death's door for now. And until next time, stay afraid of the dark universe.